all of the quarterbacks Kevin O'Connell has had the last 3 years. This is Kirk Cousins. I think there's some Nick Mullins in there. I know there's some Josh Dobbs in there. Sam Darnold. So across the board, it's better for, obviously, the Vikings. Not just win-loss. And obviously, Rodgers missed a full year, but the per-game numbers are the per-game numbers. So Coach Mangini is joining us, and I'll ask you, Coach, who's the better option for the Minnesota Vikings this season? J.J. McCarthy or Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I don't think you can rule out having both of them there, and I don't think that's a bad situation depending on how the dynamic unfolds, because nobody knows what J.J. McCarthy is at this point, and nobody knows what J.J. McCarthy is going to be coming off of the injury, so you've got that unknown as well. If you could bring in Aaron Rodgers and have him there to compete with J.J. McCarthy with that understanding, which is probably a big ask for what Aaron Rodgers wants in the world, then I think it could be a really good situation. If Aaron Rodgers would be willing to come in and actually act as a mentor and act as someone that can help J.J. McCarthy move forward, that could be a really good situation as well. Now, Aaron hasn't shown the ability to do that. It's hard to say that he will go in and be willing to do that. But at this point, after the Jets experience, for him to go on that Brett Favre sort of timeline where Brett, after he left us in New York, went to the NFC Championship in Minnesota, it could be a really positive thing for him. Being a dome with a talented team gives him a chance to end his career potentially on a high note.
I think the only way Rodgers would mentor J.J. is like, you're behind me, I'm the starter, watch me, and then I'll help, like with Zach Wilson. But I don't see, like, if I was looking for a mentor or a veteran to compete with J.J., I'd rather bring in Russell Wilson, because I think Wilson would be fine, and he's obviously not the stature of Rodgers. You could bench Wilson if it wasn't going well. You bench, you'd have to cut Rodgers, I think. I can't imagine he would be benched. And I actually get that with how great of a player he's been. I'll say this, I think if theoretically their ceiling is higher with Rodgers this year than J.J., I think you feel like you're going to compete for the Super Bowl if you get Rodgers. But you guys know, like, where I'm at on Rodgers is I do not think, as good as the Vikings are, that they will win the Super Bowl with him or even get there. I think Rodgers has shown since he won his Super Bowl in 2011, he has not even been back. He's had, when he was at his best, when he was in his prime, with great weapons like Devontae Adams, great coaching like Matt LaFleur and Mike McCarthy, defenses weren't great, but still, even those years they went 13-3 is like late in his career, he couldn't get them past an NFC Championship game. I just don't. I think if he went there, I don't think they get to the Super Bowl. And so if that's the case, why would I bring him in? Let me just go with J.J.
Well, coming off, remember, he had back-to-back MVP seasons, and then he had the down year before he went to the Jets. So, I mean, those are pretty.
But even in those years, he couldn't deliver what you think he should have.
Which I get, but I'm sure Minnesota would sign up for Aaron Rodgers as MVP of the league and see whether or not they can get over the hump that Green Bay couldn't get over. He is a year removed from the injury, so that makes it, potentially more attractive.
I'm baffled by Minnesota being involved in this, especially now that we saw, again, sorry to pat myself on the back, especially when I'm in the host chair, but classic one by me about.
First of all, you're not sorry. Just be honest.
But during last week's Sports Media Ombudsman, when I was like, hey, can we get accurate contract details? And I threw Sam Darnold's $55 million guaranteed out there as an example of did he really get that? And we found out today, no, Sam Darnold's deal is a one-year, $37 million guaranteed deal with 2 team options. If that's all it was going to take to keep Darnold, and you're this unsure about J.J., then you could have just I would have been fine with that. Now that we know that the contract that Darnold signed, the team can move off him after one season, then I would. I think going to J.J. is the right move because you spent a first-round pick on him. You liked him in the preseason. It was reported, it's the type of injury guys have. It's unfortunate it costs you a year, but it's not supposed to change the trajectory of you as a player, especially as a quarterback. But if you're that nervous about J.J. McCarthy, then just keep Darnold under those basically that same deal. They didn't want to do that. And so I don't know how many teams are going to willingly get in bed with Rodgers saying, like, it'll be different with us. I can change him. So I agree with you, Coach, that in the theoretical world where it's, listen, we're signing you because the upside's there. We have questions about JJ's injury, but it's an open competition. And honestly, ties are going to go to the kid because that's how it should work, where, you know what I mean, the kid with more upside, longer contract. But I don't think anybody looks at that as a realistic option. And I don't understand. I think this is really damaging for the Vikings to just have this lingering. That is for what it does to what their fans think of J.J. McCarthy and what J.J. McCarthy thinks of his stature in the organization. J.J. McCarthy walked out of a preseason game last year having played well thinking, I'm starter for the Minnesota Vikings. Then the next morning, his knee swelled up. He got an MRI, and they're like, you're done for the year. And now all of a sudden he's like, wait, I'm going to be done for 2 years potentially because you're going to sign this 41-year-old? I just don't get that piece of it.
Well, I don't think you're saying he's going to be done for an additional year. And I do feel like if he is legitimately the quarterback that they hope he is, he's not afraid of competition. And there's always this narrative.
Oh, I agree with that. But do you think it would be competition? That's my point. I don't think
there's no way I think Rodgers goes in there like it's an open competition.
Because he has two places that would make him the starter. Pittsburgh, he would be the starter. The Giants, he would be the starter. And Giants, maybe he's worried they could draft a quarterback too. Pittsburgh, if they sign him, he's the starter. So it didn't mean to interrupt you, Coach. Yeah. But the point I'm making is I agree with you. You don't want a guy who's afraid of competition. Where I disagree is that if I'm J.J. McCarthy, I'm like, this ain't a competition. You're signing Aaron Rodgers, telling him he is the starter, and I think that would be discouraging.
I do think, too, though, that if they did sign Aaron Rodgers, which, again, I don't think they should do, I think J.J. would not – he wants to play, of course, but I would imagine he'd also be like, this is Aaron Rodgers. Like, he's a Hall of Famer. I can learn from him.
But you also then have the wrong dude. If you got someone who's like, oh, this is Aaron Rodgers, here, you take my job for a year, then you got the wrong guy. You want the quarterback and all the guys on the team to say, bring in anybody you want to bring in. I'm going to beat him out. That's the mentality that you hope you're getting. And I agree with changing Aaron Rodgers. You're probably not going to be the one to change. But maybe the last 2 years has changed Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he's been humbled by how badly it all went. Now,
that's not true.
But Rodney Harrison used to say this: the NFL, the league, has a way of humbling you, and it humbles everybody over time. And you get to a point where if he doesn't want to go out as what he was in New York, and he wants an opportunity to go out on his terms with a good team, maybe he'd be willing to change.
I think it'd be better going out now after New York than to go there and get beat out by J.J. McCarthy or benched at some point.
All right, Dust, I need 45 seconds here for something I should have said earlier in the conversation. Put this in the would-be super interesting and fun bucket, even if I don't think it's realistic. If the Vikings are this squeamish about J.J. McCarthy to where they want to get another scorpion in the frog relationship with Aaron Rodgers, then they should quietly call the Chargers. Be like, hey, Jim Harbaugh, this guy who you said was the best quarterback you ever coached, the best quarterback in your draft, we'll give you him and our first-round pick, and we'll take Justin Herbert from him. The contract is tradable. Kevin O'Connell would finally have, he clearly thinks, Darnold's not good enough, which I agree with him. You'd have it. Jim Harbaugh could really do the whole Michigan thing with a cheap quarterback, not have the obligation to run the ball or to pass the ball a ton because your quarterback's cheap already. If you are that squeamish about J.J. McCarthy and you already leave him twisting in the wind, call the Chargers and see if J.J. plus a first-round pick could get you Justin Herbert. You might as well.
I wouldn't even offer the first-round pick. J.J. and a later pick. I tried. But I love that. Well, if I could get Justin Herbert.
I think, for Minnesota it'd be great. I don't know if the Chargers would do it.
But hasn't Jim also expressed his love for Justin Herbert?
Yeah, but that feels more like an arranged marriage as opposed to, his true love. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.